Good morning. I'd like to introduce myself before we begin. My name is Ann Carmichael, and I work with Leela, a nonprofit college access organization um, here in Baton Rouge. We serve all the students and families in the state of Louisiana. I've been asked to talk to you a bit about the FAFSA. I'd like to begin sort of with a synopsis of why we're completing the FAFSA. You guys all probably know the tuition at the colleges as listed on their websites. However, you need to keep in mind that there are additional fees, room and board expenses if you stay on campus, your books and supplies, etc. So we want to make sure that you have adequate money to complete your academic studies. Let's talk about the federal student aid programs. They consist of the federal Pell Grant, the federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, service grants, and the Teach Grant for those who plan to teach after they graduate. Federal work study is a great option for funding some of your expenses. These are jobs that are administered by the financial aid office at the campuses that you guys will be attending this fall. If you're interested in a federal work study job, it is your responsibility to reach out directly to your financial aid office to let them know that you are available for consideration for one of these jobs. These look great on your first professional resume, so make sure you're taking advantage. These monies go directly to the student throughout the academic year to help them pay for their college expenses. And then, of course, there are federal student loans that are available for those who need additional funding over and above their grants and scholarships and institutional and private aid. But it's really important to note the difference between these loan offerings. The direct subsidized loan, if you receive this offer in your financial aid award, the direct subsidized loans are need-based loans. These are for students that have the highest need, financial need. Always want to accept this portion of your financial aid offer first if you're accepting student loans, because interest does not begin to accrue on these loans once the student has graduated or ceased to attend. On the other hand, the direct unsubsidized loan is for all students. So remember, when you're selecting your offerings, this would be your second option because interest does begin to accrue on this loan once it's fully dispersed, which is within that academic year that you're applying for aid. And then, of course, parents can borrow on behalf of their students up to the cost of attendance. And there are also loans available for graduate school. All of these monies can be used at 2- and 4-year colleges, community colleges, technical schools, as long as they are approved by the financial aid office. Many parents and students want to know why they're completing the FAFSA if they are not interested in grants or federal student loans. But it is important to note that by completing the FAFSA, you are going to be considered for the TOPS scholarship if you've met all of the requirements, because FAFSA does serve as your TOPS application. Of course, as I mentioned, it's your access to the federal Pell Grant, federal work study, but also to the Louisiana Go Grant. And then, as I mentioned, federal loans, private loans, perhaps, and private scholarships and grant dollars. Many colleges use the FAFSA to initiate the financial aid process. So if you're not going to complete a FAFSA, make sure that you are contacting the school for access to these other programs. Who can complete a FAFSA? Who's eligible for federal student aid? Students who are citizens or U.S. nationals, those with a green card or an arrival departure record, those with battered immigrant status or a T visa. All students who hold one of these documents is eligible to complete a FAFSA and be considered for federal student aid. Before you begin the FAFSA, you should gather all of the documents that you're going to need to complete the form. That way, you can quickly sit down and get through this form probably within 20 to 30 minutes. Those documents are going to include your Social Security cards or permanent resident cards, your 2024 federal income tax return, and W-2s for that same year, if you filed a return, and then statements of any investments, cash savings accounts. You will need to report the balances of all of your asset accounts as of the date you submit your FAFSA. First step is to create your federal student aid ID. This identifies you as the student. You will want to go to the website listed here, studentaid.gov, and create your account using the documents that I mentioned previously. Remember that every student must have a federal student aid ID, and as we work through this presentation this morning, you will find that also the parent that provides the student with the most financial support in the 12 months prior to completing the FAFSA also will need to create an ID. The student will identify himself and verify his identity in 2 of 3 ways: by email, text message, or by downloading an authenticator app of your choice. But federal student aid is just going to have to verify that you are exactly who you say you are before you access their platforms. Once you have your ID created, you'll want to go to studentaid.gov, and this is what your homepage is going to look like. Now, you're going to see 2 options if you're getting a head start on your FAFSA. You'll want to make sure that you are applying for the academic year that you're going to be in college. Do not complete the 25-26 FAFSA form if you're in the class of 2026, unless you're planning to go to school a bit early and your academic year falls within that period. So today we're going to be looking at the 26-27 FAFSA form. The student will enter his username and password that we've just created, identify his role. So you can see that the parent could get started first or the student. However, federal student aid does encourage the students to get that head start. It just makes the process a little bit easier. The student must provide consent and approval to have his information downloaded from the IRS and dropped into his FAFSA. Even if you didn't complete a tax return for the 2024 fiscal year, you still must consent and approve to have FAFSA check with the IRS. Hopefully, you are going to be successful in importing your information. However, if you do receive a message letting you know that your info could not be retrieved, that's fine. You'll just grab your tax returns and W-2s from 2024 and begin to manually enter your information. The student will begin in the personal circumstances section, where he will be asked his state of residence and the date that he became a resident of that state. The student will list her current marital status and her college or career school plans. And this is important to remember because even if you have taken dual enrollment courses or you've clubbed out of courses or you've taken AP courses, you might be actually classified as a sophomore or junior in some cases when you're beginning your freshman year. But for federal student aid purposes and for the purposes of the FAFSA, the class of 2026 should report that they are first-year freshmen. If a student can answer yes to one of these statements, then that student will be considered an independent student and will not have to provide parental information. However, if you cannot answer one of these questions, you will need parental input. Let me quickly go over these statements. Is a student currently serving on active duty in the armed forces? And we know that you are a bit young for that. You're a bit young for being a veteran in the U.S. Armed Forces. But does the student have children or other people who he provides more than 50% of their financial support during July 1, 26 through June 30th, 2027? At any time since the student turned 13, were they an orphan with no biological or adoptive parent? Were they a ward of the court? Were you in foster care or legally emancipated as a minor? Or perhaps you are in legal guardianship with someone other than your parent or step parent. So if you can check one of these boxes, you will be able to continue on without parental info. All others will need parental assistance. Then, is the student homeless or is he at risk of being homeless? If this is your situation, you'll want to answer this question appropriately. Perhaps you cannot say yes to one of the prior dependency status questions, but you do have some circumstances that might prevent you from receiving parental input. And what are some of those unusual circumstances? Well, maybe the student has been abandoned or estranged from his parents, and he hasn't been adopted by any other adult. Perhaps the student has left home due to an abusive situation, or his parents are incarcerated. Perhaps the student's been granted refugee or asylee status or is a victim of human trafficking. These are all unusual circumstances that are accepted by the financial aid office at your college, but you'll need to contact them directly. A couple of circumstances that are not considered unusual in the eyes of federal student aid for assistance with college expenses, or perhaps parents don't claim the student on their tax returns. And remember, it doesn't matter who claims you on their tax return. The parent you need to report if you're a dependent student is the parent who provided you with the most financial support in the past 12 months. Maybe the student doesn't live with his parents and totally supports himself. That is still not considered unusual circumstances if you have chosen to do that. Perhaps the parents don't want to provide information. They don't want their information shared with federal student aid. You can skip over the parent section. However, you will only be offered unsubsidized federal student loans. You will not be considered for any of the free money available. Our parents aren't paying your education expenses. Unfortunately, many students are in this situation, but you still must be able to answer one of the dependency status sections. So, if you feel that you have some unusual circumstances, please contact the financial aid office at your school or schools to let them know about your situation. They can use what's called professional judgment and override what federal student aid suggests. That is between you and the financial aid office. Now, make sure you are not answering yes to this question. Many students do and find themselves only being offered unsubsidized federal student loans. We want you to be considered for all types of federal student aid. So do not answer yes to direct unsubsidized loan only. The student will move into the demographic section where he will be asked to report his sex, his race and ethnicity, and his citizenship status. If you have questions about any of these questions, there is an I and a circle over to the right-hand side of every section, each question in the section. You can always check there for a more detailed description of exactly what they are asked for. Next, federal student aid wants to know your parents' education status. If neither of your parents attended college, you might be eligible for additional federal student aid. So make that information available to them. What was the student's tax filing status? If you were not able to use that transfer directly from the IRS, you will be asked to answer a couple of manual questions. The student may be asked if his parent or parents were killed in the line of duty. As a member of the U.S. Armed Forces on or after 9/11, or new is students who have a parent who died performing official duties as a public safety officer. This could include law enforcement officers, firefighters, emergency service workers. There could be additional support for you. What is your high school completion status? And then move on into the financial section. You can see here that this student seems to not have been able to transfer his information from the IRS, so they will have to manually answer their questions about their tax filing status and begin to manually enter information, any income they may have made from work. And there are not that many manual questions you'll have to answer, but you'll want to go through each of them carefully. All students will be asked to tabulate the balance of their savings and checking accounts and report any cash that they might have on hand. If the student has any investments, including real estate, but not a family home, you will want to determine the current net worth of that investment. These would be like for rental properties. And most students will not have these expenses, but parents will, and we'll move into the parent section in just a second. Current net worth of businesses and farms. Now, current net worth is going to mean the value of that asset minus any debt you might owe on that asset. That will be the net worth of the property. Students will then select their college and career schools. Because federal student aid is not going to send your info out to every school around the country, you must give them permission to do so. So you can begin building your list. You can add up to 20 schools, 20 colleges to receive your FAFSA data each time you submit a FAFSA. Now, if you're going to apply to more than 20 schools, you will be instructed on how to do that, or you're welcome to reach out to a Leela rep after the session to help you add those additional schools. Next, you will be asked a series of questions as the student to determine which parent will need to contribute to your FAFSA. But let's go over generally each situation and how you will report that parent contributor. If the parents have never been married, you will select the parent who provided the most financial support during the last 12 months. If your parents are unmarried, but both legal parents live together, both parents' information will be reported on your FAFSA. Of course, if those parents are married and living together, both parents will report. If the parents are remarried after being widowed or divorced, you will select the parent who provided you with the most financial support and that parent's spouse. So that would be your parent and step-parent. If the parents are divorced or separated, then again, you will report the parent who provided you with the most financial support in the past 12 months. But this information will be put to you in a question-by-question format, and you can easily walk through the process. Once that parent has been identified, you will need their email address. So make sure you're getting that, a correct email address, valid email address from that specific parent, and then press send the invite. You can see that there is going to be a code that is going to be given to you to give to your parents if they cannot open their email and follow the instructions to contribute to your FAFSA. You can see here down toward the bottom is the code. You'll want to select that code and keep it safe with you so you can share it with your parents if needed. And then it's time for the student to review the questions and his answers to each question before you sign the student section of your FAFSA. You can use these green check marks to drop down each section to make sure that all your answers are correct. Then it is time for the student to agree that the information he's provided is correct to the best of his knowledge and to sign his FAFSA. In the meantime, parent contributors will have received that email to contribute, the invitation to contribute. And you can tell here that the student will receive a pop-up showing the email address, the date and time, and invite code that was sent out to that parent. If you need to make a change at this point, you can always manage your invitations and resend that invitation to another email address or another parent. So now your parent has received an email asking them to contribute to your 26-27 FAFSA so that you will be considered for all types of federal student aid, and they will accept that invitation. The parent, in the meantime, has created his or her federal student aid ID at the same web address that was mentioned previously. And it's the exact same format. So once the parent has created his federal student aid ID, username and password, he will enter here, enter his invitation code, and then he will be told that he's going to be sharing his information in that student's FAFSA. The parent must also agree to provide consent and approval for the IRS to check his data and download it from the IRS system and drop exactly what they need into the FAFSA itself. If parents do not want to complete this process, they can refuse to contribute. However, their student will only be offered unsubsidized federal student loans. Hopefully, it's a quick process and you can see that your information is being imported securely. But if not, you will have to take a few additional steps, but we are here to help you if you have questions as you manually enter. I think it's about 6, 7 questions that you will need to manually enter yourself. Parents will want to grab their income tax returns from 2024 and continue on through the process. Parents will be asked demographic information about themselves and their family, which will include the parent's current marital status, their state of residence at the time that they're completing the FAFSA, the month and year that parent became a resident of that state, and the parents will move on into the financial section. But they will be asked to report if they received any of these following federal benefits. Did they or anyone in their family at any time during 2024 or 2025 participate in any of these federal benefit programs? If you're not sure exactly what these programs are, you can always use that I within the circle over to the right-hand side of each of these offerings to get a better explanation of perhaps what the Earned Income Credit or EIC is. Parents will report their tax filing status. And then also information will be asked if the parent filed a joint return with their current spouse or did they file separately. If a student's parents filed married separately, they will each need to create a federal student aid ID and each import their income from 2024 from the IRS to drop into the student's FAFSA. Now, this will take a couple of extra steps, but it's a pretty seamless process If you do need assistance, we're happy to do that, and I'll provide you with some options at the end of this presentation. What is the contributor's family size? So when a contributor is downloading their information from the IRS automatically, they will see that their list of dependents, spouse, etc., are going to be listed on that income tax return. But a lot can happen between 2024 and 2025. So you have the option to manually adjust that family size. If you have questions about this, of course, we're happy to help. There are a lot of resources within the form itself if you have questions about exactly how to report this. But we want to make sure that every contributor has been able to receive credit for each one of his dependents. Perhaps the parent who provided you as the student with the most financial support in the past 12 months did not claim you on their income tax return. Perhaps you don't live in that parent's household. That is when you would want to make that manual adjustment, as you can see in the bottom field. How many students in that contributor's family are going to be in college? We want to make sure that the college is giving you access to additional dollars if you have more than one child in college during the 26-27 academic year. But I do want to let you know that this question in itself is no longer reported to the financial aid office, although you are asked to report it here. The colleges will not see that number. So if you are in a situation where you have several students in college within the same academic year, it's your responsibility to contact those financial aid administrators at your colleges and let them know that you may need a little bit of additional support and they may be able to assist you. Now, it looks like this parent was not able to link their tax return to the FAFSA, so they will be manually reporting these questions. As you can see, their tax filing status, they will be asked to report their earned income from work, their tax exempt interest income, etc. But don't panic. There is a lot of information that is offered to you to the side of each of those questions if you're not quite sure how to complete. In some instances, they will, when you check the I within the circle over to the right-hand side of each question, they will bring up a tax return and they will highlight it and show you exactly which line to include when you're reporting manually and which you shouldn't be including. If the contributor himself or herself received child support from another parent within the last complete calendar year. So if you're you're completing your FAFSA during 2025, how much child support has that contributor received during the entire calendar year of 2024? This is not what you were court mandated to receive. It is exactly what you did receive in child support. The parents then will report the balance of their savings and checking accounts and add in any cash that they might have on hand. Then the parent will report the net worth of investments, including investment properties, but not the family home. So again, I'll remind you that the current net worth of your investment will be the value of that investment minus any debt you might owe on that asset. For the current net worth of businesses and farms, you will need to report the current net worth of each. But if you own a family business with 100 or fewer full-time employees, you will not need to report the asset of that family business. Remember, that's a family business with 100 or fewer full-time employees. Also, if you own a farm or a fishery on which the family resides, you will not report that as an asset either. Next, you will be asked information about your parents' spouse if the parents did file married separately. And then it's time for the parents to sign and submit the FAFSA. Now, you'll want to make sure that, like students, you are expanding each of these sections, looking over every question you were asked, and making sure you answered appropriately so that the financial aid office will receive the most accurate information, helping them to work through a asking them to work through. Now, it's time to sign and submit. So make sure that the parents are reading through this legal document. It is binding. They will need to sign and agree that the information they have provided within the FAFSA is correct to the best of their knowledge. And once they do that, they'll receive a pop-up congratulating them on completing that student's FAFSA. Now, there's a wealth of information and resources within these pop-ups themselves. So make sure that you are reviewing everything before you move on in your next steps. However, the student will receive an email letting them know that you have completed your portion of the FAFSA itself, and they will receive an email listing their FAFSA submission summary. That would be exactly the questions and answers that they have completed and that their parents have completed. They'll want to review that to make sure that all the information is correct. You can see on the FAFSA submission summary, which of course is emailed to the student himself, or if you want to go back to your FSAID account, you will be able to review your FAFSA submission summary at any time. You'll see the date they received the application, when they processed it, a data release number, which is important if you want the college to make changes on your FAFSA themselves. Say you don't want to have to log back in and make specific changes that you've seen that necessary after you submitted, you can provide this data release number to your college financial aid office, and they can take care of that for you. On your FAFSA submission summary, you will also see your estimated federal student aid offer. Now, federal student aid does not award you with federal aid. They just make suggestions to the colleges that you've given them permission to. They will show your Pell Grant eligibility, perhaps, any direct student loans they see that you might be eligible for. Federal work study is another option. So make sure you are looking through this with a fine-tooth comb. And if you need to make a correction, you have access immediately to that option. You will see and generated here the Student Aid Index. This is a formula that federal student aid uses after considering all of the questions that you answered within your FAFSA itself. And that formula is what is sent over to the colleges to determine what aid they may be able to offer you to attend their school. As I mentioned, as you move through your FAFSA summary, you can see exactly the questions you were asked and your answers to them. And if you need to make a change at this point, each of these questions is a hyperlink. You will just click on the hyperlink. If you wanted to update your date of birth or your email address, just click here. It will take you directly to that question and you can update it. But remember, when you make corrections to your FAFSA, you must sign and submit again. You'll also be shown the colleges that you sent your FAFSA data to. Perhaps you want to do a little bit more research on those colleges. What is their graduation and retention rate? How often do students transfer from their school or into their school? What's the average annual cost? So there is just a lot of info here that you will want to make good use of. Make sure you're taking good note of the next steps that are your responsibility as you move through the financial aid process. Because remember, the FAFSA is just your first step in access to federal student aid. Once the college has all of the information that you've provided on the FAFSA, they will begin to review and calculate your financial aid offer. Now, many colleges will wait until the student has been accepted for admittance to that college and has completed the admissions guidelines. So make sure you're continuing to do that. I know that October is College Awareness Month, and a lot of people are busy completing their college admissions applications. So make sure you're doing that. But it's okay to go ahead and complete your FAFSA now. The school may hold on to your FAFSA data until you complete the admissions process, but your FAFSA will be date stamped and your aid will be awarded according to the date that your FAFSA was received by that school. So it's always a good idea to get your FAFSA done as soon as possible. The financial aid office is trying to calculate your school's net price. So they will know the cost of attendance at their college for your one academic year. They will be looking for any grants or scholarships available to help you pay for that academic year, but anything remaining will be your responsibility to pay. A lot of times, this is where federal student loans come in. So make sure that you are saving wisely and looking for all of those scholarships that you're going to be applying for this year. The college will then send out a financial aid offer to you, the individual student. They won't all look like this. They will come in a variety of formats. Most college financial aid offices will communicate with the student through their student account at that college. So once you've been accepted at that college, create a student account and then wait to hear from the financial aid office. You will see your cost of attendance and each item line itemed. So make sure that you are looking through here. You will be told any grants and scholarships that the financial aid office has found to help you pay for your academic year. And then you will be offered the maximum of student loans that you can receive up to your cost of attendance. Now, this does not mean that you need to accept every dollar of those student loans. So make sure that you're working with your parents to understand what a loan is, and that you're borrowing wisely. If a college has received word that you have received an outside scholarship, that also may be reported on your financial aid offer. If price is important to you, make sure that you are taking all of your offers and you are prioritizing them. Yours may not look this clean, but you definitely need some sort of a way to keep up with your financial aid offer so you can make the appropriate decision. Always accept your financial aid in this order. The free money first. That does not have to be repaid. Those are scholarships, whether they're institutional scholarships, private scholarships, federal grants, private grants. All that is free money that does not have to be repaid. You're earning your federal work study monies, so that does not have to be repaid, but student loans do. So make that your last option and only accept what you need to complete your academic year. If you do decide that you need to borrow for your education, make sure that you are taking good note of interest rates for those different types of loans, loan fees. Does it cost any money to originate your loan? Are there any incentives like an auto payment if you make certain on-time payments? So make sure that you are quite aware if you're going to borrow exactly what your situation is going to be. And as I mentioned, this is prime time for scholarship searches. And remember that every scholarship dollar you earn is one less dollar that you are going to have in student loan debt. So this is an important time of year. Continue through your scholarship search and make good use of your free time your senior year. Leela is offering again this year a FAFSA completion scholarship. We award this every month. If you apply now, if you plan to complete a FAFSA, or if you already have, you can apply by using our QR code, which will take you directly to our quick application. Um, so please take advantage of this. Your name will stay in the contest within your senior year, so you'll have multiple opportunities to be considered for this random drawing. If you choose to stay in the state of Louisiana and attend a college here, whether you're a senior or you're in graduate school, or perhaps you're a counselor going to take some courses, you are eligible to apply for our Choose Louisiana scholarship as long as you are attending a college in our state. And hopefully each of you have received your FAFSA completion guide for the class of 2026. These were distributed earlier in the month. If you do want an electronic copy, you can go to our website at leela.org, or you can email me directly and I'd be happy to send one over to you. On our website, you'll also see your senior checklist for college planning with lots of great hints, links to scholarships, other resources to help you get through your senior year so that you can be ready to start college this fall. I want to provide you with my direct email address if you want to talk to me about anything that was presented today. Please feel free to reach out. If you want to get started on your own FAFSA, that's fantastic. You have a quick question while you're in the form itself, please feel free to call our helpline. Or if you want to schedule a free virtual FAFSA session, you can have a Leela representative within your Google Meet session walking you through each step of the way. I am going to stop at this point and give you as much time as you need to ask any questions that you might have. So I will be checking the chat box. What happens if a student or parent does not consent to the IRS data being shared? That's a good question that does need to be reiterated. If a student refuses to have his information transferred from the IRS and dropped into the FAFSA, even if you didn't file a return in 2024, the FAFSA group still needs to check with the IRS to verify that. If you choose not to consent, you will only be offered federal student loans. So make sure that you are consenting to have your data transferred from the IRS. What are some common mistakes that students and parents make on the FAFSA? And I will tell you right away that one of the biggest mistakes that students and parents make is hurrying through the form, not reading through each question. So make sure that you are not rushing and that you're continuing to read through and ask questions if you have to. If you need to stop your form and gather some more information, please do that. It's better to submit a completed FAFSA than have to go back and make FAFSA changes. Another common error is that the students may send the FAFSA invitation to the wrong parent, or they perhaps don't have that parent's email address entered correctly in their invitation. You can go back and look at your FAFSA submission summary if your parent does not receive your invitation, and you can make that change and submit the FAFSA again. Yes, the students are watching the presentation, and parents also have been sent invitations to watch along with us. But I will be providing a recorded copy of this presentation to Mrs. Colson, and I will also provide her with the presentation deck. What if your income has changed significantly since your 2024 tax returns? And that's a great question. Because the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA, is a generic federal form, you must answer the questions exactly as they're listed, and that includes information from 2024. So submit your FAFSA, but if you have had a change in income, somebody's lost a job, or you have additional medical expenses that have been incurred since 2024's return, you will want to contact your financial aid offices directly so that they can work with you to make those needed changes. You can't make the changes on the form itself, but you can get your information over directly to the financial aid office, and they will work with you independently. I have come to the bottom of my list of questions. Does anyone else have a comment or a question about the presentation?
Did you answer the question about the FAFSA if you make too much, if you think you make too much for financial aid?
Well, that's why we want you to complete the FAFSA, because we do not know what the formula that's used by federal student aid. It's going to depend on every single question and your answer to each of those questions, whether you're eligible. It's not always an income level issue for receiving, say, grant-based monies, but that will all be determined within the FAFSA form itself. And
Gotcha. Thank you.
many institutional scholarships and grants do use the FAFSA to determine additional aid that they might be able to offer you. So a lot of times it's good to go ahead and get your FAFSA submitted to the college, and that will initiate the financial aid process. Yes, colleges do often have a higher threshold for need-based aid, but remember that every college is given a lump sum of money from federal student aid to use at their university or college. And that's what the financial aid administrators are tasked with. And that's why it's important to apply to as many colleges as possible. You could possibly receive more aid from one college than the other. In your same situation. So if price is important to you, make sure that you are completing the FAFSA and applying to as many schools as possible. Okay, if I don't have any other questions, Ms. Coulson, do you have anything else for me or anything else I can share? If not, I will just leave this here on the screen and for everybody to have the opportunity to jot down my contact info and resources. And I appreciate the opportunity to present today. Thank you, Ms. Coulson.